So Dean is here joining us today, our author. Dean, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Served 3 parishes over the years, one out in Eugene, Oregon, another in Edina, Minnesota. And I left that parish to take a call to the seminary. So I taught in the 90s, I taught at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis, homiletics, and then took a call to teach it, or to be a pastor again in Woodbury, Minnesota, where I presently live. And then was elected a district president and served in that capacity till I retired a few years ago. And I still teach at both Concordia St. Paul, Concordia University St. Paul, and Concordia Seminary as an adjunct. One course in the fall at CSP and another course in the spring at Concordia Seminary. That's my story. I'm married to Susie, a retired Lutheran high school teacher, English teacher. That was interesting, being married to an English teacher while I was crafting sermons. And she was a speech teacher too, so that made it even more challenging. And then we have 3 kids and 5 grandkids. That's
great. And then your free time, you're writing Advent sermon series.
That's true. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's wonderful. It's fun. Yeah.
Well, Mark, you're our editor over worship kits and so many other wonderful things here at Creative Communications. You want to share with the group a little bit your background and how many years have you been at Creative now?
Right. I've been saying 28 years. I started in 1994. It was really my first job out of college. I did graduate from Valparaiso University with a major in professional writing. I am a son of a pastor, so I knew a lot about the church. And I've been doing a lot of worship and devotional materials ever since I started here, and have gradually become an editor, and have kind of gotten we have a good stable of writers that we use just from time to time. And I feel like my job is to just kind of encourage and support and renew and excite the writers in their work.
Excellent. Well, you're doing that today with our Be Born. Yeah, Be Born in Us today. I'm Corey Latimer. I'm your marketing manager here at Creative Communications. I've been with this team for going on 4 years now. It's going by really fast. I've been in Christian publishing and Lutheran circles since 2000. So it's a blessing to be with you all today, just to share a little bit the reason why we do what we do. So anyway, we're going to kick it off. I have the PowerPoint here. Let's get started with our PowerPoint. And if you have, just wanted to remind any of you, if you're not familiar with Zoom or don't do a lot of webinars, if you take your mouse and hover at the bottom of your window, you'll get a little pop-up and you can ask questions, raise your hand, and I'll be monitoring the chat today, so we'll try to answer all of your questions. Another note that if you have any questions you come up with during or after that might be a little bit more lengthy, just send us an email at comments@creativecommunications.com, and they come to my desk and I'll get them to the right people and we'll get your questions answered. So thanks again for joining us today, and we will get started. All right, I just need to see where to share my screen, and here we go. All right, how are we doing here?
Good.
Okay, I know I could share it a little bit bigger, but sometimes I like to add little notes here at the bottom. So if everybody is comfortable with this window, we'll start with here. So first Sunday in Advent this year starts November 27th. So it'll just be around the corner. And I'm going to jump to the next screen. And Mark, if you want to introduce us to the theme this year.
Yeah, I wanted to just, we use this idea of Be Born in Us today, which comes from the hymn, O Little Town of Bethlehem. It's one of the lyrics. And so I used that as the theme overall. And then this was the verse from Isaiah 9:6, for unto us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. It's a very classic Advent theme and a very classic Advent verse. And we will kind of be breaking that open in the next 4 weeks, as you'll see, in different ways in which Christ is born in us and what he brings to us through his birth.
Great. All right. Well, we're going to dive into week 1. So just to give everyone a little outline or lay of the land of what we're doing today, Dean is going to go through the 4 weeks of Advent, kind of give you a little bit of background and a deeper dive into what he was thinking and how he prepared these sermons. We'll look at those 4 weeks and then also a Christmas Day and Christmas Eve message. So we're going to spend about 5 minutes on each of those sermons. And then Mark and I will wrap it up by basically digging into a worship kit. So all of the components that are standard that you might find in a worship kit. And then just share some of the other complementary resources or supporting resources that go along with this theme. So we'll give you, like I said, we'll give you most of the meat up front here. And Dean, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, thanks very much. It's always, I think, good to say on the front end of something like this that I'm sure that these sermons, as you look at the manuscripts of the sermons, will take on your own character, your own style, and that you'll find in the sermons probably some helps with structuring a sermon. Also, certainly with illustrating, I want you to know that I don't normally use as many illustrations that you'll see in these sermons, but that's because I want you to be able to pick from among them what works for you as you present these sermons. It was interesting to work with basically a carol text as the theme. Just to refresh you, the last stanza of the little town of Bethlehem, "O holy child of Bethlehem, descend to us, we pray. Cast out our sin and enter in." Here it comes, "Be born in us today." That's the phrase that we built these sermons on. So a little bit, maybe too much disclosure here, but I didn't choose the text or the topics. Those were chosen by, I think, Mark and whatever committee there is there. And yep. So that's kind of a blessing for a preacher, just be handed a text, which I appreciated very much. So let's go. What I'm going to do is go through them. And with each of the sermons, I'd like to focus on just a few sentences about a hero depiction. If you're familiar with that phrase in homiletics, we're talking about what's going on in the life of the hearer that prompts this sermon. So this sermon is written with a particular need in mind, and we want to meet the needs of the relevant needs of a listener to the sermon. So the first one is "Be born in us today, bringing blessing." And the text is Genesis 12, the opening verses. "Now the Lord said to Abram, I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing." So the hero depiction that I'd like to present here would be that of feeling insignificant, feeling unblessed, feeling very ordinary, maybe lost in a crowd, maybe even hiding in a crowd. A lot of our identities today are given us by the tribes that we run with. So that could very much be the hearer that's listening to the sermon on "Be born in us, bringing blessing." So the sermon, it provides several images. The one image I have is you're watching a Packers game, and I hope that's okay that you can talk about a Packers game. And you see two friends suddenly as the camera is panning the fans. There are two people that you know. What are the odds? And you wave to them like they can see you wave and shout out their names. But it's just amazing. Out of a crowd, there's one or two people that you know, and they're on television suddenly. Like the Where's Waldo books, where you looked for that Waldo figure, mass of people. So the very same thing happens in this text as God looks across his world, his creation, and finds a tribal chieftain named Abram. And out of that great crowd of nations and then all that huge population, he chooses Abraham to be a blessing to many. And out of that blessing, people are brought to God. So the movement of the text that I'd like us to get with is moving from the many, the crowd, to the one, Abraham, to the many, the nations, to the one, God. So from many to one, to many to one, and that's repeated again and again in the scriptures. So it can be easy for us today, as I said, to get lost in a crowd. And so what happens in this text is we get the assurance that God knows us one by one. And that, as Luther said, and I have a Luther quote in this sermon, it's not just that he died for the whole world, but he died for me, and he needs to be born in me this day. So as I do with many of the sermons, I like to use art pieces. And for this sermon, I found a piece by Peter Bruegel titled The Census of Bethlehem. Wow, that's wonderful. There it is. I chose it because look at all those people, and there's snowball fights going on, there's fishing going on, there's all kinds of stuff. There's a bakery, but you have to look very, very carefully. But in the foreground, almost in the center, you can see Mary on her donkey, and she's on her way in busy, busy Bethlehem. Do you see her on the donkey? Right in the foreground. You have to squint to see it. There it is. Somebody's got an
Okay, I see it.
Yeah. And you find Mary, and she's great with child. And if you look even more closely, there's a cow looking right at you, as if the cow is saying, I think Bruegel, you have to really look for this, almost a magnifying glass, as if Bruegel is having the cow say, take a look, here she is.
Yep.
God has chosen this one out of all the women of the world. God chose this one to give birth to the Savior. So I like that again, because it points to the singularity of the blessing of Mary to be chosen, favored among women, as the angel says, and then to give birth to the Savior. So this whole wonderful theme of out of the many God chooses Abraham, out of the many God chose Moses to bless his people, out of the many God chose Mary to bless us with a Savior, out of the many God chose his only beloved Son to be our Savior and Lord. And out of that one comes many, many blessings. And we each singularly then have the privilege to bless others, just as Abraham did with the good news of Jesus Christ. So that's the first sermon. I'm only giving you just a little taste, okay?
Yep.
All right.
Okay. Next.
All right. Let's go to the second one. Should we just move on?
Yeah.
All right. All right. So the second one is Be Born in Us Today, bringing renewal. And this is that fantastic, you got to preach on Isaiah and Advent, for heaven's sake. You got at least one Isaiah text. And this is the one, even youths shall faint and be weary, and young men shall feel exhausted, but they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. Remember, they shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Since we're dealing with a carol lyric, I went to two carols to give us the idea of a weary world, a weary listener. So the hero depiction here is a person who's fatigued, maybe in their faith, who's exhausted, tired in a very, very busy season, but maybe just needs some refreshment, needs to be strengthened in their weakness. And that's what this text is all about. So from the carol, O Holy Night, I mentioned in the sermon, I don't know whether you'll use this or not, but it's interesting that this sermon was really popular because it was cherished by abolitionists when the United States was fighting over slavery. Truly, he taught us to love one another. Remember this lyric? His law is love and his gospel is peace. Chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother, and in his name all oppression shall cease. Just kind of an aside, but that is a wonderful lyric at a time when we were fighting against slavery in the United States. But the verse that gives us what we're really interested in is, long lay the world in sin and error pining, you know these lyrics, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. That same idea of a weary world is picked up, and it came upon the midnight clear. Still through the cloven skies they come, with peaceful wings unfurled, and still their heavenly music floats o'er all the weary world. So the whole concept of weariness, I have a quote in the sermon from Gandalf in the Fellowship of the Ring, where Bilbo Baggins actually says to Gandalf, I'm old, Gandalf. I don't look it, but I'm beginning to feel it in my heart of hearts. Well preserved. I feel all thin, sort of stretched, if you know what I mean, like butter that has been scraped over too much bread. I need a change or something. So this whole feeling of exhaustion and weariness and feeling old before our time. And we can sometimes get stuck there. And we can be surrounded by people who are like that. An old proverb, it's hard to soar like an eagle when you're surrounded by turkeys. It can be really tough to be surrounded by people who have no energy. Carl Sandburg, there's an eagle in me that wants to soar, and there's a hippopotamus in me that wants to wallow in the mud. So you begin to see that we struggle, and that's what I try to do in the front part of the sermon, is to give us some images, some thoughts of what weariness looks like in our lives, and then to move to what Isaiah does here. And what Isaiah does here, well, let's talk about what he doesn't do. He doesn't say, come on, get up, move it, get going. Instead, he talks about his remembering the God of Israel's history, who always brought strength when his people were weak. So the focus ends up not even being on ourselves, but this great exchange of God's strength for my weariness. In my weariness, I can lean on God. It's interesting. He does the work of a remembrancer here. In ancient times, and even in medieval times, a remembrancer served the king by reminding the king or queen of our history. This is what happened. Let's not forget our history. And that's what Isaiah does here. He remembers the history of God bringing strength to his weary people. It's a great speech of comfort and consolation and strength for God's people. So I closed the sermon out with an image of Bertel Thorwaldsen's sculpture of Christ the Consoler. I grew up in a church where this was up front, not the original, that's in Copenhagen, but a replica of it. It was life-size, so that as a child I could look at this life-size statue of Jesus over our altar. And Jesus basically inviting those who are weary, those who have become exhausted, to come and rest with him. And that wonderful story that's told about how in the model that he made of clay, he had it in his studio, and it was so hot in the studio that the arms of Jesus came down from way up here to where they are in the statue. So from kind of an overpowering Christ or an ascending Christ to a Christ who welcomes us and offers us his strength for our weariness. So again, another image. You know, when you see these images, you can either just describe them, and then people go home and I promise you they'll Google them and find them, and they'll probably send you a copy as if you've never seen it before. This happens to me. Or if you can, if you have a screen capability, then you can put it up. These are all public domain images. Or the other option would be you could, depending on how many people you have, you could actually make a copy of it and insert it into your folder for that particular time. But again, I'm a big fan of planting pictures in people's minds. They might not remember everything you said, but they'll remember what they saw in the sermon. So that becomes significant. All right.
Great. So Dina, I want to let you know you're pacing well, about 5 minutes each. I have a question from Kathy here. Her question is permission to use the artwork included in the purchase of the Advent? And we don't offer permission for these. They're pulled from, like you said, public domain. For the demonstration today, I did grab things off the internet and include links for folks to do research on their own. But we do offer permissions for the content we create for you to use here in public consumption. So I want to just ask if either of you want to add anything to answer that question.
Just that I'd say these are public domain. They're really easy to find. I started doing this in the 90s before they were all over the internet. And I can remember the students I had began sending me emails then telling me, I found it, I know what it looks like. Well, okay. Yeah, good. Yeah. So, you get away with not using them and just use your writing skills or speaking skills to describe it. But it is nice if you can get an image up for people to see. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Mark, do you have anything else to add about the permissions that we offer?
Just that as far as our text is concerned, we give you the right to change and adjust anything that our kit has in it to make it usable for you and your church.
Great. All right. Sermon 3, Be Born in Us Today, bringing guidance. and from Psalm 31, just a great psalm. It was fun actually preparing sermons on Psalms. We don't preach enough on the Psalms. I really liked it that you had chosen these Psalms for preaching. Verse 3 of Psalm 31, for you are my rock and my fortress, and for your name's sake you lead me and guide me. So I tell a story at the front end of the sermon that's from my experience, but I noticed Mark, or one of the editors, said, a pastor tells this story. That pastor was me. Yeah, you don't want to, for the preachers listening, you don't want to make this your story unless it really happened to you. So it's probably better to say a friend or a pastor I know told this story. Yep. But I got lost up in the Cascades, and I was looking for the perfect Christmas tree, spent too much time. It got to be dark. I got good and lost. It started to snow, so I lost my tracks. Sitting on a log, looking at two diverging paths in the woods. This is a Robert Frost moment, if you know that poem. Which path do I take back to my car? And suddenly a member of the church appears behind me, puts his hand on my shoulder and says, "You're lost, aren't you, Pastor Dean?" I said, "I'm really lost." He said, "Follow me." So this was a friend from Church, Jerry, that was looking for his own Christmas tree. And he ends up dragging the Christmas tree he found behind him. And we get back to his truck and my car. And the next morning, that Christmas tree he found was on my front porch as a Christmas gift. So it was just a great story of needing guidance, being lost. So the hero depiction here is people who bring to this Christmas confusion, a lostness, just wishing they knew which way to go next, big decisions to make. Those kind of hero needs are addressed in the sermon. Yeah. So this is written by David, King David, possibly Psalm 31, in response to a conspiracy and sedition act by his son Absalom to overthrow his kingdom and actually to assassinate David. It's a prayer for deliverance and rescue, asking God to be his rock and his fortress. In the midst of that prayer in verse 5, I love this phrase that David gives us, the beautiful prayer of trust. Into your hands I commit my spirit, which ended up being a bedtime prayer for Jewish boys and girls. There, now I lay me down to sleep. They would say from Psalm 31 verse 5, into your hands I commit my spirit. I always loved that when Jesus is dying on the cross, he basically falls asleep in his Father's arms. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. So what we get in this psalm is assurance that when the way gets hard and we're not sure we can make it, when we're confused and wondering if we're going in the right direction, we get a hiding place, we get an assurance, we get strength and wisdom in the Lord. Eugene Peterson's paraphrase in The Message, "You're my cave to hide in, my cliff to climb. Be my safe leader, be my true mountain guide. Free me from hidden traps. I want to hide in you. I put my life in your hands. You won't drop me. You'll never let me down." So I close out the sermon with a wonderful, almost liturgical poem written by Christina Rossetti, who wrote the lyric for In the Bleak Midwinter Carol that so many of us love. You probably have heard many choirs sing that. Oh, you got this. Wow. Even though you Robert Frost, and then next to it is the Rossetti.
Both.
I don't think I included the Rossetti in this illustration.
No, but I can see it off to the right. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
It's not written. It's actually a 4-stanza poem, but you've got it written just with the questions and the responses. But you can see it's written as a dialogue. Yep. She's asking on this uphill trek to supposedly an inn that's at the top of the hill. She asks these questions, and then there's someone responding to her. And we can assume, knowing Rossetti was such a strong Christian, that that's the Lord. Does the road wind uphill all the way? Yes, to the very end. Will the day's journey take the whole day long? From morn to night, my friend. And it goes on and on. And if I were preaching this and had space to print it out somewhere, this would be a great call and response back and forth between the pastor. Of course, I want to take the God part. The congregation ask the, I'm just kidding, but the congregation ask the questions along the way. But there's such assurance here that there is an inn at the top of the hill. Just keep going, and all the questions that come along the way. And so the sermon ends with this assurance that God will lead us and guide us. It helps to know that others have gone the uphill journey before us and have heard the voice of God in the scriptures or the encouraging word of a friend. There will and is a promise, as promised in the Psalm, a rock, a fortress, a resting place. So that's the theme of guidance for the confused, the troubled, the wondering, where do I go next? And what's ahead for me? All right.
Yep.
Okay, we have a question. From Clayton, great references to Christmas hymns. What does that say do for congregations that try to stay true to keeping Advent music in Advent?
That's a great point. Honor your tradition at home. I guess if you don't want any sneak peeks of Christmas during Advent, and if that's your tradition, don't break it up for this series.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah. I'm trying to think of the two. Yeah, Little Town of Bethlehem is definitely Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Be Born in Us Today is Christmas. So I think I'd still honor that and use Advent hymns that maybe give us the same themes.
Yep.
And there are those for sure. I don't know, Mark, if you have some ideas on that.
Right. Yeah. Usually I recommend just go to what you normally do for your Advent music, and then you can still use the sermons or the illustrations in the same way, but maybe not reference, the Christmas hymns.
Sure. Yeah. And in using the Christmas carols, you can actually preface it by saying, as we look ahead to Christmas and these songs, which kind of takes the edge off of doing Christmas before Christmas really arrives, because I really like having a full Advent season. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Good question.
It is.
All right. We'll move on.
Sermon 4.
Here we go.
Be Born in Us Today, bringing power. So this is the here a depiction of feeling weak, powerless, suffering loss, feeling alone, powerless to make a difference in what's coming. And so I begin with this wonderful remembrance of winning one of the few games we won in an away game in high school and rocking the bus with the school song of victory. And that's what Exodus 15 is. It's a victory song. It's the song by the sea that Israel sings with Moses, probably written by Moses, to celebrate having crossed the Red Sea and having been freed from slavery in Egypt, a rousing victory song. And the celebration of what's being celebrated there is actually a celebration of God, who God is and what God does. So I talk in the sermon about several songs that are there throughout the scriptures that celebrate God and his victory over slavery, over sin, over death. And the sermon captures the three Passovers that show up in these Exodus chapters. The Passover of the angel of death, the Passover of Israel on dry ground through the Red Sea, and the Passover of Israel's enemies as the Lord defeats and passes over them in battle. So it's very much a Jewish thing to sing at significant moments. And it's very much a Christian thing for us to sing as well. I mentioned several songs surrounding Christmas and mentioned too the song in Revelation 15 where they sing, "Great and amazing are your deeds, O Lord God, the Almighty." So we sing songs of victory. I close with a story of a guy who joined our church, and we would often ask new members, why did you choose our church to join? And he said, quote, for 40 years, I'd walk by the church and hear the people inside singing. I listened to them sing about the greatness of their God. I listened to them sing for a very long time. One day I finally decided to walk in and join their song. Never forget those words. And then he was welcomed into the church wearing a choir robe. He already joined the choir. Which is great. We're a singing church. That's who we are. And our songs are often songs of victory. They can be laments as well, but especially in this season, it's a time to celebrate the victories that are ours and the one who comes to us. All right, those are the 4 Sundays in Advent.
Yeah.
All right. And, I think you also referenced the Carrie Underwood song, right? The Champion.
Oh yeah, that's the Champion song. That's how strong.
A modern day power song or something.
Yeah, there's some high school athletes like that song. So
if you want to be hip.
There you go. Yeah. All right, then there are 2 more sermons, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. The Christmas Eve one gives us the Gospel of Luke 2. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. And here again, I used an art piece to start with. I used Caravaggio's wonderful Nativity with St. Francis and St. Lawrence. The original piece has been stolen and been missing for over 50 years. The original, I think, was something like 9 feet tall and 6.5 feet wide. So they walked away with a big painting. It's with St. Francis and St. Lawrence because it was commissioned by a prayer chapel and a church bearing the names of St. Francis and St. Lawrence. So they're in the painting itself. But I chose the painting because it uses Caravaggio's technique of night light. There's a fancier word for that, but we don't need to say that. It's just the light seems to come from nowhere. There's really deep darkness, and the light just shows up where Caravaggio wants you to look. So it's kind of Caravaggio saying, "Let there be light," and he gives us a very rustic nativity. Mary, very disheveled, weary, just having given birth. Christ laid in a pile of hay at her feet. The angel pointing up towards heaven, almost as if saying to the Christ child, yes, you're the one. You've been sent from the Father. It's just a beautiful rustic nativity. But I chose it because out of all that darkness that's there, and look at half the painting is pitch dark, there are these figures and the faces and what we're meant to see. And so I take the light darkness theme and really work it in the sermon. And toward the end of the sermon, I have a series of kind of call outs to the hearers. Let me just do a couple of them. Mm-hmm. If there's someone here who cannot find your way in the dark, someone who's like a sheep without a shepherd lost in the night, then for you this night there is a light to guide you if you will only trust him. For you, the light of Christ has come. If there's someone here tonight whose darkness is conflict, someone who's been at odds for too long and is tired of the battle, then for you tonight there can be peace and reconciliation. For you, the light of Christ has come. So it becomes almost liturgical, but it's kind of calling out the significance of the light that comes to Christ. I didn't mention that the darkness that's associated with Caravaggio's paintings, he lived a very dark life. He was a crook. He was charged with murder and was on the run most of his adult life and died at the young age of 39. But out of all that darkness, the light just shone through his paintings, especially his paintings of biblical themes. So, and then I mentioned in the sermon, we can grow accustomed to the dark. We can get used to living there. Obviously, that's not a good thing. Emily Dickinson has a great poem on that. All right. Then finally, Christmas Day. Psalm 85, a beautiful psalm. And this is be born in us today, bringing us salvation. Show us your steadfast love, O Lord, and grant us your salvation. So the hero depiction here is the deep desire for assurance. So it's the hearer who may lack confidence, who may lack hope, who on Christmas maybe is more open than at other times to listen to a message of hope. I think sometimes we accept Christianity in all of its glorious moments, but we don't include in Christianity the fact that there will be downs, that we can follow Christ and still have down moments. I quote Lucy here in the Charles Schulz's Peanuts cartoons, where she says, I don't want any downs. I just want ups and ups and ups. So that what we get in the psalm is another remembrancer psalm, where the psalmist remembers a time when God turned from anger and forgave Israel all of its sins, and then turns to the present tense and sees a time of downturn, of a lack of hope. And many think that this psalm was written on the return of the exiles who returned to their homeland and found a land that was just desolate, having been gone for 70 years. And then the writer prays some rhetorical questions. Will you be angry with us forever? No. Will you not revive us again so that we may rejoice in you? Yes, the Lord will revive us again. And so in verse 7, we get our Christmas prayer. Show us your steadfast love, O Lord, and grant us your salvation. So the incarnation of Jesus Christ, which we observe on Christmas Day, changes everything in terms of our struggle with sin, our struggle with death, with the enemies that are there before us. He dies, he's raised, never to die again. And he makes his footsteps a way for all who follow him. So our recurring ups and downs will continue. Sinners will sin. That's what we do. God will forgive. That's what God does. But we can be assured of our salvation today. Henry Nouwen wrote his letters to Mark about Jesus. And in one of those letters, he wrote, I wanted to write to you about the love of God become visible in Jesus. How is that love made visible through Jesus? It is made visible in the descending way, Jesus came down to our level so that we can be lifted up to live with him forever. That's how we know his love. Jesus has not only moved into the neighborhood, he's made his home with us. They say home is where the heart is. In Jesus, we are all home for Christmas. So again, I do suggest that you can either end each sermon with the theme, show us your steadfast love, O Lord, in this case, grant us your salvation, O Holy Child of Bethlehem, be born in us today. Or you could close each sermon by singing that last stanza of Town to bring that theme back each time. So those are the sermons. They're replete with illustrations. That's intentional. And I try to in my preaching, let the text drive my sermon. So very often the structure of the sermon just follows the movement of the text or the mood of the text. And again, I encourage you to go the direction the Lord leads you as you use these as maybe some initial or secondary or tertiary resources for your preaching.
Yeah, what I really, thanks, Steve. I love these. I'm even just in my mind thinking about, could you use these outside of the Advent Christmas season?
Oh, certainly thematically, they work outside the Christmas season. Yeah. Because there are texts that we don't associate, and these are not. I don't think these are lectionary texts. Maybe one or two of them might be, but they're not lectionary texts. So that, the lectionary presents many opportunities to preach on these themes. But I think it's crucial, and what I tried to show today in my own limping way, is when you prepare a sermon, first and foremost, who's listening? And how are you going to depict your hearer's life so that, we talk in law preaching about the second use of the law, show them their sins, let them look at their own lives. And the same with the gospel, apply that gospel to real needs that they have in their lives. So some people might call that an expose sermon. We're exposing their lives to themselves and seeing what Christ can do with their lives.
That's great. Well, thank you for walking us through this. Again, I just really love the way of the alignment and the themes. And there's an overarching theme, but every week brings some uniqueness to it as well. So there's just a lot of layers here, I think.
You're welcome.
The hearer will really appreciate as well.
It's rather strange to be talking about one's sermons rather than just preaching them.
Yeah.
This is a strange experience. It was good though. I liked doing it. It was fun. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, so Mark and I are going. Mark, did you want to add anything before we jump into the worship kits?
Nope, that's okay. Yep.
Okay. Tim says thanks also. So thank you for coming today, Tim. We're all in this together, and so it's great to be together. Get my head off the desk here and be with all of you. So thanks again. Mark and I are going to jump into what's included in these worship kits. Some of you may have used these before. This may be your first time to our worship kits. We provide them for the different parts of the liturgical calendar, mainly Advent and Lent. We do have Christmas and Easter, and then some patriotic other worship series, but they follow a similar pattern where we provide you everything you need in, call it the box. And you can take it out of the box and use it as is. Dean also mentioned that, really encouraging you to bring your own style and think about the hearer and your congregation and customize it in that way. But the other beauty about this is if for whatever reason, your pastor or you are not able to be there on a Sunday, this kit can be used by the worship team. So it's a solid theological worship series and set for that Sunday that for whatever reason, if you need to hand it off to someone, that it's a complete worship program for that Sunday and series of Sundays. This year, what is new is that we are introducing the sermons only. So you all have the order of worship, however you use it in your church. So if you just want the sermons only, that's an option for you. You don't have to buy the entire kit. You can get the sermons only. However, we will show you if you use the complete collection or the signature collection, we give you everything to service 50 members in your church or 25 members. The items are also available sold separately. So there is a lot of savings and a lot of content that you get in those kits, and it makes it a complete thematic experience for your church for that entire season. So, Mark, we'll jump in.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So,
all right.
Yes, we offer worship kits, and we offer them in PowerPoint form. Also, you get with the PowerPoint slides with the kit, as well as paper copies, and also in digital format, just the text, and you can edit the text in any way you want. This, for instance, would be the first PowerPoint slide that you would see on week 1 to just set the theme.
Right. So, and we do differentiate every week in the color, so you can get, it's thematic throughout the series, but there's a little bit of uniqueness to each week.
This is a page from the kit that shows you just all the different pieces that we have for each service. There's an order of service. There's a complete script that you can just read straight through by a worship leader. Scripture readings are just by themselves. If someone is just going to be reading the scripture readings, just give them those. Then if there is a children's sermon that goes with each service, that could be read by the pastor or another worship leader, the sermon by itself. And then there are prayers that are thematic to each week.
Right. So what we're presenting here today are the PowerPoints that you can use on your screen. You don't have to use all of them. You can make edits to any of them. And then the little drop-in image shows you what the notes and how it comes on the PDF. So this would be something you would use in your binder as you're preparing for the week, and how it aligns with the PowerPoint. So I didn't give the entire song. I'm just demonstrating how
Sure.
that works.
That's fine. Yeah. So here's one of the hymns, and then there is an invocation and lighting of the Advent wreath. That's part of each week. So if you are doing the lighting of the Advent wreath, there's a little place there for that to happen. Then we do offer a confession and absolution in every service that is thematic to that service. So it's different each week. Then we do include at least some or all of the verses of A Little Town of Bethlehem if you were using that. But we again show you like what the tune name is and what verse we suggest for that time.
All right, this sample is all for week 1. So all of these samples are relevant to week 1.
Then we do offer a prayer of the day. Again, it's a special customized prayer that talks about the theme of the week. We just want to continue the theme as much as possible.
Right. Of course, you can add your own personal prayers for members and
Sure.
nation and community, etc.
Sure. We do offer other worship or other suggested hymns. This is from Once He Came in Blessing.
Again. If you have a different sequence, you can resequence these however it works for you.
Sure. Here's where we suggest that you put the children's sermon, and you can see that the whole text is there, and there's a little object lesson. This one, you need a gift wrap Christmas box, for instance. And so we just tell you what you would need for this children's sermon, just a 5 or 10 minute children's sermon.
Right.
Also thematic.
Right. And this children's message could be used Sunday morning during your regular worship. You could use it in your children's church. You could use it during midweek. So if you don't have a children's message time in your Sunday morning, you could use this content other places, Sunday school or wherever. So just share that with your children's ministry leader.
It's very true. Yes. We do have another hymn that we suggest, Angel Gabriel from Heaven Came. That also is offered here. Then we do suggest these Bible verses that we're talking about that Dean mentioned that we used as some or all a part of to base the sermon on, but all involving, for instance, this week on the idea of blessing.
And would these follow the Lutheran lectionary?
And these are not, I think like Dean was saying, I think I just pulled them to match the theme. Okay. And so they're not related to any lectionary at all.
Okay. Right.
We also offer you the text of all of those Bible verses so that you don't have to look them up yourself. They're all just there.
Okay.
Another hymn for the sermon, I think. And the sermon is about 10 or 15 minutes long, just for your reference. But we do include the text of the entire sermon there for you. And so you could just read it straight that way, or as we've talked about, you could adapt it. Then a hymn of response after the sermon. Then we have included the Apostles' Creed in each service, I believe. It's become a tradition. And then offering is suggested here. We suggest a mini movie to play during the time that I've gotten from Worship House Media. There's a link there if you want to buy that for yourself about blessing. This, for instance, was about Blessed Assurance, that song. And but as you know, or as we have experienced, the offering is a very up in the air nowadays. People don't really collect offerings in an offering basket anymore. So you may have to just take this part out.
However it fits your church.
Then these are like the prayers of the church sort of that we offer and have written already to go with the theme. So if you want to use these, you can. If you don't want to, that's fine. But we do offer them in the same sort of rhythm and structure that prayers of the day, our prayers of the church are offered at the end of a worship service. We offer a benediction that again matches with the theme of blessing. And a closing hymn to just round out the service. Come now, precious ransom come. We do have done this recently where we offer a newsletter notice and a bulletin notice that just kind of wraps up in a short couple sentences what the service is about, what the theme of the whole series is about, just so people can read that before they go into the service, and then when they are at the service, maybe they would read about this. Well, it's nice to know what we're going to talk about today.
And so you see that it's a complete order of worship, and then you have those extra pieces. So the newsletter or bulletin notice, all of that could be shared on your website. It could be used on the bulletin stationery we include.
Yep.
So however you choose to use that, that's in part of the entire package there. Okay, so let's see, go to the next screen. So then the pieces we talked about today were the traditional worship series. So that code is BBT1. And then I'm going to jump to the next screen. We also talked about Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So those were basically the 6 sermons that Dean illustrated for you all today, for all of us.
Yep.
Then along with that, in that theme, is a family worship series. So that's perfect for midweek or a family-friendly service if you have a Saturday night service, or maybe you have a separate family-friendly service on Sundays, different time. They all follow along those themes. Do you want to say a little something about the family worship series?
Yeah, we kind of envision it happening maybe in a fellowship hall or in a rec center or something, around tables, like family units, working together. There's usually a craft or a kind of child-friendly song that you can do, and maybe you could take it home or something, kind of like almost like a mini VBS for each service. And it's very, very casual, but still incorporates the same themes, but puts it in a more family-friendly way or something like that. It was written by a pastor, Jeremy Klaustermeister from Warrenton, Kansas. Warrenton, Missouri, I mean.
Kathy has a question for us about the art we're seeing on the PowerPoint. She's asking if this is a JPEG also. If she's able to use this maybe for creating her own little newsletters, I assume. But these screenshots are JPEGs, I think, that are available, or are they only in the PowerPoints?
Right. I think right now they are only in the PowerPoints. Again, we've offered them, or we pulled them from, stock photography and then designed them around that. Our suggestion, if you really want those exact pictures and stuff, you can reach out to us and we can tell you the exact places where we got those images, and you could purchase them on your own. But we don't have the rights to just give you those images on our own.
Okay. So Kathy, I'm gonna just give you the email address here, and we can connect after our session today.
Yeah, I can send you the information.
Okay, I can't type in talk and walk all at the same time, so okay. Let's see, Stacy, are the scriptures the same for the traditional worship and the family worship? I like to use a different text on Wednesday.
Oh, let me think here. I think they might be the same, but let me check for sure. Oh, I have it in the. Oh, they are the same. Sorry. So they would be, you could just change them out if you wanted them to be different, but
yeah, okay, so great, so they all align. So the family program, okay.
Yeah.
Great. All right, today. Okay. All right, so we'll go on to the next section here. Look at Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. So this gives you an idea of the collections. So we have the complete collection and the signature collection. 199 or 99. The complete collection serves 50 individuals. The smaller one is 25, and all of these items are available and sold separately. So what comes in the big complete collection, of course, is the traditional worship kit we went through today, the Christmas Eve and the Christmas Day the PowerPoints and everything included. Then also our devotional booklets that can be handed out. They follow along with these themes. And there are the devotions for each day of Advent. So
Great.
I think that's, how many pages are in that? Do you recall?
Oh yeah, it's a 32-page booklet of 28 devotions inside.
Okay, great. Then we also have the study guide, the leader's guide.
Mhm.
Not as many, that would be 10, but we don't always expect as many people do the study as the larger group doing the devotional, which the devotionals could also be used as a small group discussion starters. Then we have the poster that kind of keeps the theme alive as they come and go throughout the season, and some biblical bookmarks, and then sticker books for the kids. So we'll go through some of those individual pieces here real quick. But you can see that normally a worship kit is running around $39. So once you add all of those pieces together, this is quite a deal. You save $170 here and $120 here. So it's very easy. Just order those kits if you choose to go that route. Of course, all of these are sold separately, and you can also get the sermons alone on their own. Devotional. Do you want to talk about the devotional in the Bible study?
Sure. We had a writer, a very famous writer, Chad Bird, write on the same theme from his perspective on all these same 4 themes each week. And so there's a coordinating devotional booklet you can read each day. And if you would like, we can put that, we can send you envelopes with them, so you can send them to your parishioners at their home for a different code, BB6FE.
Right. So the envelopes come free with that. We started doing that when COVID started so that we could get resources in people's homes, and it was very popular. We've doubled the demand of that over the past year, even when things eased up. But I think it's been a convenient resource. You can include your own newsletter, information about your worship times, special events and program schedules coming up for the season. Include one of these bookmarks that is part of this package, so that envelope makes it extremely usable.
Right. And then we offer a Bible study also written by a PhD in theology, Carol Geisler, and she goes deep into the Bible readings for each of these weeks. Again, we're using the same exact themes, but again, from her perspective and from her deep dive into the Bible readings.
Great. Okay. We have the biblical bookmarks. Do you want to explain what those are?
It's kind of an interesting thing. It's kind of like a miniature version of like the daily devotional. Like if you don't have the money or the time to read a daily devotional, here's something you can stick in your pocket or purse with just a small thought for each day and a short reading for each day of Advent.
So there's 4 bookmarks. So the pack has 50 of 4 bookmarks. So you get a total of 200 bookmarks, right?
Right. I think that's all one piece. It doesn't show that, but it's a folded card on slick paper.
Okay.
So it's a one piece thing.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. What do we have here? The poster and the insert.
And then we have a poster that you put up in your church and an insert that just explains to the congregation. You just hand this out before the worship series started, and just explains the worship series on the back.
Okay.
This in a very practical manner.
All right.
We also offer just for something for the kids. This is an interesting sticker book that has stickers inside of it and a daily reflection for each day. But then you can put these stickers on very specifically in different places on a stand-up display of a manger scene.
Yeah, so that's a daily activity too. Although if it were in my house, I would probably do the whole thing in one day.
Just do them all.
Still do the readings each day, but I would probably couldn't resist putting all those stickers on at once.
I know.
All right. Some other core
Yeah,
basics.
we have other things. We offer a children's worship service. Many churches these days still do a children's worship service on Christmas Eve or day, or sometime during the Advent season. And so again, we had a different author, Sandy Geis, do a children's worship service based on these same themes, but in a very like there's like a little like dramas, little kid-friendly songs, a little recitation from the kids. There's enough recitations and enough memory lines for like a small group or a large group. You can separate it out any way you want, but it's mainly like there's a little scene of a family getting ready for Christmas as the centerpiece of this service.
Great. And then we have some other keepsake type items, little handouts you can use after worship on a Sunday or use it during your midweek. You could make Advent care packages for those college kids or your military service people, or even just use them as outreach. So a lot of different ways to use these. These could be used as classroom gifts. Teachers want to give to they're affordable that a teacher could give them to all of the students. There's just so many ways to use these affordable resources. So we have the magnets. I think they come in packs of 25. The candy cards, a little candy cane with the J is for Jesus. Those come in 12s. And then the metal ornament. It's a little bit giftier item. So that's sold in eaches there. So that's really a nice selection that you can have for Advent. You can use these items all throughout or pick different Sundays to hand out different pieces. You can find all of these items on our website at creativecommunications.com/born. And there is a sample of the sermons and the worship kit that we talked about today. You can go to that website and download the sample. And then you can see the collections, how they are put together. And then also below that gives you some of the other ancillaries. So just scroll down on the web page, you can find those resources and learn more. So if it's a print piece, you should be able to see samples of all of those items online. So if you have any questions, suggestions, whatever, we want to hear from you. We'd love to see how things are working for you in the church, in your parish, and are there any gaps in resources that you're finding? Are there new things that you're finding that you need? I do want to give a special thanks again to Dean today and share with you this book that he published recently, The Beautiful Sermon. And Dana, I'm going to hand it over to you to tell everybody about this great book. Because if somebody wants to do some more sermon prep, how would they use your book to do that? And you're still on mute, I believe.
Yeah, it's published by Concordia Seminary Press, came out a year ago this month, and talks about the use of art in preaching. If there are pastors listening, it gives some helps on how to integrate visual art, especially in preaching. It also does a little bit of work on aesthetic theology, the theology of beauty as it relates to preaching. Not a whole lot of work has been done with that, so I made a first attempt at doing the aesthetics of preaching. And then some helps with how to use image, whether it's an imaginary image or a visual image, but how to work image into a sermon. So that was commissioned by the seminary, and it's the first in a series, the Conversation series of books on preaching. Thanks for the plug.
Yeah, great.
Very welcome.
Yeah, it sounds like it just brings another level of engagement. And so many people are so visual, so I think it just really helps sometimes help tell the story.
Yeah, it's available anywhere, but Amazon has it. So yeah.
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming, everyone. We hope you enjoyed the program today and just found some refreshment in the day. And I just want to hand it over to you guys if you have any last thoughts you want to share before we let everybody go.
Thanks for the invitation. Great to be with you. Thank you.
Yep, it was a great time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, we'll be sending out the video tomorrow, so you can look for that. And if you have any questions, suggestions, we would love to hear from you. Contact us at comments@creativecommunications.com. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a blessed Advent.
Thank you.
Great.